Welcome to the grim darkness that is the 41st Millennium. I am Inquisitor Caveat Ventus, keeper of the Inquisition's Black Library, and this is my report on the Valentyne Heresy, an actual play podcast set in the Genesys adaptation of Warhammer 40,000's Dark Heresy role-playing game. This report features Game Master Tom McGee, Ryan LaPlante as Inquisitor Lucius Valentyne, Laura Elizabeth as Lyric, and Tyler Hewitt as Alto. What heresy awaits our trio in the grim darkness of the far future? Find out now in the first episode of the Valentyne Heresy, where the Emperor protects the righteous, and only the righteous.
In the grim darkness of the future, there is only war. But there still remains a hope for all mankind. The Emperor, on his golden throne, reigns over the Imperium of man, a psyker unknown amongst any others to come before or after, one gleaming hope for humanity against a galaxy that seeks to kill it, a galaxy of dangerous aliens, of mutant horrors, of the warp, of chaos. The one thing that can hold us all together, guide us, and bring us to salvation. The God Emperor of mankind. And it's his body that is torn from its throne, the last thing keeping his decaying carrion corpse alive, and thrown at your feet. You watch as cables and ancient needles and machines tear his ribcage out. And as his body collapses, you hear a death rattle, one last gurgle from an ancient, decrepit body before the last hope of humanity is snuffed out. Before you, you see 10 figures standing in shadow, each of them vaguely recognizable from the mechano-arm of a tech priest, the distinct outline of Space Marine armor, the sort of clinking fetishes of a Chaos Marine, the robes of a diplomat. You see these figures, and your brain struggles to understand what's happening. The Emperor on Terra has been untouchable since the Horse Heresy. His mind cast out into the warp to keep humanity together, and yet here stand these 10 figures that have somehow managed to pull the last hope for humanity's survival amongst the stars out of the only thing keeping it alive. You glimpse each of them in turn. You overhear snippets of conversation. One of them seems to be larger than the others, speaking in a slightly more relaxed tongue, and you watch as this figure sort of steps before you, and you recognize the bulge of muscles and the huge teeth of an orc standing in the most holy sight of all of humanity. And you watch as this orc urinates on the corpse laying before you, laughing, saying something to the effect of, "Not so holy now, is he?" You watch as they begin to examine the throne, begin to disassemble this ancient piece of technology from the Dark Age, lost to all living memory, as they strip it for parts, muttering of secrets and heresies. You watch this, and the world you know and everything you've been taught to believe begins to fall away as you realize that the entire universe is about to plunge into darkness. And Inquisitor Valentyne, that's when you awake. You awake to a sense of rushing air across your face. The last you can remember before the horrific scene of blasphemy you just witnessed was being aboard a ship, this ship, Gilead's Fist, en route out of a sector of really no import, on your way to report back to the Inquisition. But the odd thing about Dauntless-class frigates is the air circulation in them has never been particularly good. So the fact that there's wind on your face is somewhat concerning. You remember a sound of rending metal. You remember the sound of screams. And then you remember the death of the Emperor. As you struggle to gain your bearings, you realize there's wind on your face because you can see the sky. And as you begin to blink, the twisted images of the warp that still threaten to shred your very sanity, you see clouds, and they're moving quickly. And you breathe in through your nose and smell air, fresh air. And you realize you're falling. The ship is falling. And it can barely be called a ship anymore, because all around you, pieces of the Gilead's fist are plummeting towards an unknown planet. What do you do?
I look for an escape pod immediately. Dauntless are how big, Tom? Are these like Hunter size, or are they bigger?
They're smallish. So bigger than they're kind of on the scale of craft. They're kind of like second last tier. So still big enough to be a proper frigate. Still definitely has a large-ish crew. You don't command your own vehicle. You're kind of catching a ride. And as you kind of get your bearings, suddenly you can hear the alarm klaxons. You see a servitor skull bounce down the deck beside you, and you realize that the deck is beginning to slant. Even though you're kind of falling through vertical space, I want you to imagine the equivalent of a ship going down. So you're basically on the ground is on a 45-degree angle. As you look around, you can see the hull has been shredded. You can hear screams and lasgun fire coming from kind of one of the nearby hallways. And you seem to be in kind of a almost a meeting room. You recognize it as where you held a couple of briefings with some of the command crew, just to inform them of your purpose and, check your credentials and all that. Looking around, you see a few bodies. You can see one looks like a lieutenant that you'd had lunch with a couple times. Caught halfway in and out of the ship on a rent piece of metal, his body kind of fluttering in the wind as the ship begins to plummet. From your remembering of the ship, the escape pods would be fairly close by, given that you're kind of near where the command crew hangs out. But this is more a question for you than for me. How aware is Valentyne of his surroundings on a ship, do you think?
Probably aware of his surroundings functionally at most times. I mean, from a mechanical perspective, like, he's got very, very high perception. His whole thing is to keep track of. But I feel like he doesn't know, like, other than the broad strokes of how ships work, he'd know the things he would need to know, which is like, where are the captain's quarters, where's his way out, where are the ways between the people you need to talk to. But that's probably it. Okay,
cool. So you begin to struggle to your feet, which is difficult given, again, the incline and also the sort of lower sea chaos occurring around you. What do you look like?
So Inquisitor Valentyne, his name is Inquisitor Lucius Valentyne. He is about 6'3", 6'4". He's tall, he's lean. He's probably close to, like, he looks late 20s, early 30s. He's probably a little bit older. Like, he'd have treatments because they'd be delaying age, because if he's an Inquisitor, they'd want to keep him alive. He's probably closer to like 40, 45, but still pretty youthful, pretty spry. He looks like, if you're to take John Krasinski and add 15% Stephen Merchant, like, just so there's a little bit of like chipper British man inside a John Krasinski type. He's dressed like an Imperial commissar. So like a long black leather coat. It's very severe looking. He's got an armored breastplate that's got like the Imperial Aquila, which is like a two-headed eagle in gold across the front of it. Guns on his hips. He's got a chainsword. And he wears like a military kind of like peaked cap. That doesn't have, it has, I think, like the Inquisition eye on it. So he can wear that, but if he takes it off, no one knows that he is Inquisition, kind of thing. Probably the most defining thing about him, other than that uniform, which is very recognizable for anyone kind of in military terms in the Astra Militarum, is his eyes are bionic. If you look at them, they're actually steel, and then it's emerald around the irises, and depending on where the light catches him, it's just got that, like, when you see a dog at night with the light reflecting in the eyes, they're there. And then there's scar tissue that goes basically in almost a full circle around his head, over the nose to the metal eyes and around to his ears, which it's subtler to see, but his ears are also just steel mesh inside. He also has bionic ears, and it breaks the hairline around his head. So when the cap's on, it can like hide the sides of it, but you can't miss the kind of side scarring. He tends towards like sunshades when he's meeting new people or wanting to stay inconspicuous, just because the eyes are so finely done that it's very clear he's very important, whereas sunshades can help him blend in when necessary.
Okay, so with that in mind, then I think we're going to go ahead and say it's pretty easy for you to find escape pod, because I think if being someone who spends a lot of time kind of observing your surroundings, that's like a thing you would notice. Like my dad worked in crisis consulting for a long time, and like any airplane he's ever been on, he counts the seats to the exit, and it's just a thing he naturally does. So I feel like it's that kind of mentality. So you begin to kind of like force your way, and it very much is like you can feel the ship is now it's becoming debris. Like the actual superstructure is beginning to implode. As you know, the Gothic fleet is not meant for atmosphere. That's really not their deal. So this is rapidly becoming like the world's worst drop pod. But no one in it's wearing armor. So it's going to be a very squishy drop pod. You begin to kind of like claw your way up the deck as the ship begins to fall around you. And ahead, as you kind of reach the corridor that has the pods, you see just a couple of sort of Navy troopers get tossed full on up against the pod wall. You hear a sickening crunch as one of them just fully breaks against it. The other one, she gets to her knee and just starts like offloading with a las rifle, or las gun, I suppose, down the hall. And out of the sort of darkness comes a twisting horror that at one point probably had some amount of humanity, but the warp has affected it in the ways that the warp is known to do. So this abomination begins clawing its way towards the Navy trooper who is opening fire. What do you do?
Okay. Is it steep enough that I can stand, Tom, or am I crawling?
It's you're standing, but it's very much like, walking up a stupid hill.
Yeah, I think he would reach up. He's got a necklace that hangs on like a very sturdy chain around his neck, and at the end is kind of a symbol of the Inquisition with like a red ruby in the center. And he would just press the ruby, and then around him a refractor field would spin into place, which is like a personal force field that shimmers a little bit in the air around him. And I think he would just draw his bolt pistol and say, "Oh, well, the Emperor loves to put challenges in front of us, doesn't he?" And then he would just raise his bolt pistol and chainsword in the other hand, and then he'd just kind of start shooting towards it. If it's between him and the pod, then game on.
Meanwhile, Laura and Tyler, the two of you are, on paper, incredibly lucky people in the Imperium. As humanity is stretched across the stars, all manner of habitation has begun. Some is very classy, very plush. Admittedly, still in a grim, dark way, so everything's still pointing. There's skulls everywhere, but like plush skulls, and the points are extra sharp. And there are some tremendous cesspools, the death worlds, the places where it's you versus a jungle full of velociraptors, and that's just a day for you. So the two of you are very lucky because you have grown up in one of humanity's greatest endeavors, one of humanity's greatest hopes. You have grown up in Galen's glory, the first and, to your knowledge, only dome city in the sector. So Galen's glory is a massive, massive, massive reinforced glass dome that essentially from space almost looks like a blister on the surface of the planet. It is, think, just as kind of a general visual reference for like nice things in the 40k universe, tend to be very gilt gold, bronze, brass, very steampunk almost. But like the like proper ugly steampunk involves a lot of oil and grease and everything's kind of gross. So don't think like beautiful glass dome. Think like grungy ass. The image I have in my head is kind of like a Victorian greenhouse. So just like they tried to make it nice, but there's just so much shit in the air that it doesn't.
Is it like a fish tank that hasn't been cleaned?
Yeah, kind of.
Algae.
It would be honestly, it would be like if you took like the Rapture Dome from BioShock and had it sort of topside in a, I'm gonna say it's kind of like a Badlands desert type planet, except for this blister. So inside Galen's Glory, in theory, was supposed to be a habitat-controlled, climate-controlled dome, and a chance for humanity to reclaim a little bit of the luxury and a little bit of sort of the posh lifestyle that existed back in the dark age of technology that has since been lost. But as with most of humanity's grander endeavors in this grimdark universe of ours, it has truly gone to shit. And what was built with the best of intentions has now become a cesspool. But on paper, you are very, very lucky. Because who wouldn't want to live in humanity's first climate-controlled dome in a generation? Inside Galen's Glory is a hive city. So the hive cities of the 40k universe are essentially urban sprawl, but if it happened vertically. So there was a city. We decided to put some stuff on top of it. We're kind of running out of room. You know what? Fuck it. We'll just add a little bit more on top. You know what? I'm kind of rich. I bet I can build something on top of that previous thing, but oh, you know what? The bottom's getting a bit loose now. You know, just dump a bunch of metal down there. It's fine. And over the span of generations, slowly, the equivalent of a metal anthill begins to form. In an alarmingly literal visual metaphor for how capitalism grinds people down, there are some real shady floors to this hive. And while the people up top are still able to like vaguely convince themselves that they're living in this luxury dome, everyone down below knows the truth. And the truth is that Galen's Glory is a fucking death pit, just like everywhere else in the goddamn galaxy. And if there's one person who knows that, it's you, Lyric. You know this better than almost anyone. You spent your whole life in this fucking dome and in this fucking hive. And well, you've heard tell and seen a couple of sort of strange oddities from the nightmares that you are told live outside the dome in the wastelands. You're well aware that inside isn't much safer. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's more dangerous because at least out there, you know that you're low on the food chain. Whereas in here, everyone seems to convince themselves that they're somewhere further up than they actually are. So Lyric, you and your younger brother have been surviving in Galen's Glory for years now, for as long as you can remember. You had parents at some point, but everyone had parents at some point. Doesn't really matter. What matters is you got tough and you got tough fast, and you got tough so he didn't have to. And well, he still has to survive in the lower levels with you. You've managed to spare him from some of the true horrors of living down here. Lyric, what do you look like?
So I basically look like if Sinead O'Connor got in like daily fights. So I'm kind of like
Sinead O'Connor?
Yeah, yeah. Basically like kind of medium build but athletic. My head is just like buzzed, my hair. I wear tactical clothing, like all my clothing is tactical. It's kind of like a deep crimson red with like kind of silver and gray buckles, like gray combat boots. And I I kind of have like, you can see scars from like fights that I've had, like all my face and arms. And I always have a bruise on me somewhere. But that's just kind of the nature of where we live.
Gotcha. So you're in a rare position today of actually having a not terrible day, which for you, Lyric, is kind of like the best day that could happen.
Yeah.
Your most recent job was for one of the gangs that you sort of intellectually and ethically don't love. They're called the Gnashers because they file their teeth to points. A lot of people on the street in the lower levels would say that there are rumors about them being cannibals. You are fully aware that these are not rumors, but like very, very much confirmed facts.
Yeah.
But despite that unfortunate oddity, they are actually pretty solid when it comes to making sure you get paid on time. So you recently finished a job with the Gnashers. As you can imagine, for people who file their teeth, and really that's their thing, dental care is actually a high concern. So it was a strange job, but a lucrative one, where you managed to hijack a shipment of what would essentially be like a bleaching agent for teeth that also has some kind of restorative properties, a little bit like fluoride. But like grimdark fluoride, fluoricide. You managed to hijack
Crest blood strips.
Yeah. It's just the toothpaste is named the same way they name paints. Do you want your mouth to be blood fresh? It's like, yeah, I flossed. It's blood fresh. So you managed to hijack a shipment of fluoricide, and they were super happy, and their party was alarmingly demure for a group of cannibalistic murderers, where they were all just like dipping their teeth in a cup and just like, they're like, we can't eat for a few hours, and here's your money. So despite the kind of uncomfortable company, for once you actually have sort of a fistful of credits. So the region that you and your brother live in is sort of lovingly known as the Glory Hole, because there's a certain tone that comes with living in somewhere that is still advertised on almost every corner, particularly in these lower levels, as paradise. So you are constantly inundated with fucking chippy, cheerful, like, you know, welcome to Galen's Glory posters just everywhere, and they're all defaced and old, but built of sturdy stuff. So it's a little bit like if the apocalypse happened and you were forced to live in Disneyland. Like, it's kind of infuriating how naive these people were to think that this would work out.
I would definitely, like, I think a long time ago, like, I stopped like being actively like mad at that stuff. And it's more like I pass it by and will just probably like, I can like crack a sign with like the butt of my gun casually as I pass.
Sure. And I think that's pretty common down here, because again, like, there's so few options that that's kind of all there is. Like, it's not like, I remember when this place was nice and now it's not. It's just, it's always been a shithole, and it continues to be. But for someone who has never experienced any form of luxury in her life, the idea of people coming, particularly to a planet that is actively and aggressively trying to murder you if you're outside the dome, high radiation levels, bad solar shielding, like, the only reason anyone is alive on this planet is because of this dome. So, like, fuck you. This was a dumb place to live. It's like all the people who built like mega mansions on the side of like a slowly eroding cliff, and were like, my mansion went over the cliff, and everyone's like, that's how cliffs work. Like, what the fuck you thought was going to happen? But as I said, you have some money in hand today, and that means that you're going to be able to surprise your brother, which is something that brings you. Like, you have a difficult time enjoying things outside of fights. But one of the things you enjoy is having only had one protector really in your life, but even she was like training you how to fight and murder. Being able to kind of provide for someone and then also provide something that isn't just a bare essential on top of it is a rare. That's as close to luxury as I think you can get in this kind of hellscape. So with your knuckles still hurting from the guard whose jaw you broke, but it's kind of a comfortable throb because I mean, like as any professional fighter does, like your hands are tough now. They're used to punching, so it's a comfortable throb. You walk into a sort of like almost like a canteen bodega kind of joint that is sort of a combination general store and sort of watering hole. Ryan, what is the name of this bar?
Blanc's Cabin.
So you walk into Blanc's cabin, and as you do, you tap the helmet that's just above the door. It is an ancient Space Marine helmet that has been lovingly dubbed Blanc because as the urban legend goes, that's the sound his head made when I bashed it off the ground. Space Marines are essentially legend at this point. You've never seen one.
Oh God, no.
Despite what all the Warhammer promotional material would have you believe, they're not a common sight. Unlike all my friends in high school who all had them, including me. So think like in the way that Star Wars, like people like know of Darth Vader, but like no one sees Darth Vader. It's like that, but on a really, really grand scale. There's no reason to believe in these sort of mythical things. And to you, it just looks like a fancy person helmet, for lack of a better term. Does look functional and looks like high tech and stuff, but I get the sense you don't really trust technology too far, which makes sense given that you're living in like the death throes of a cesspool.
Yeah. No, I get that people use it and it's fine, but it doesn't do me any fucking good.
No. So you tap Blanc on the way in, and you look around, and there's sort of the usual assortment of ne'er-do-wells. This the kind of aesthetic of this place is like if a Blade Runner city existed in Mad Max. So outside the dome was like very Mad Max. Inside the dome, it's not quite a Thunderdome, but you get it. But like it's inside the dome is a more civilized version of the Mad Max aesthetic, but it is still that kind of rough and tumble, we've repurposed everything vibe. And despite the air controls, everything's just always a little bit dusty. Like there's just a bit of sand kind of everywhere at all times. What you know kind of from what Kel taught you back when she was still kicking is that all of the environmental controls degraded years ago. And basically, nothing's being filtered anymore. It's just pumping out whatever was in the filter. So the air is always kind of thick with both heat and also just a sense of staleness. And it means that, basically like it's just dirt and skin cells as far as the eye can see.
Right.
Or lips can taste. So you walk into Blanc's and you have a goal, and your goal is to find something your brother would like, because he was a little bit put out that he didn't get to go on this particular mission with you. But to your mind, he's there are certain crews that you're very happy to have him on board with, but like. He actually, like, he has a very, very specific skill set that's very good, but completely useless to a gang like the Nashers, who are real smash and grab, stick around and fight some people types, whereas his specialties lie more so in the I'll get you out of there and then
Yeah.
disappear kind of tactics. So it's kind of an I'm sorry, but also kind of for you a I got this. What do you think you're going to try and get him?
I'd really love to see if there's like, I think I want to get him like something that will entertain him. Like if there's any sort of like new game, I think we have like super shitty kind of like consoles, but like nothing fancy. But like if there's anything new I can get him, like, because Jesus Christ, he needs some stimulation in his life.
Okay, so you know that there is a hacker, and again, like I really can't stress enough how kind of fucked the state of technology is in the 40k universe. So much knowledge has been lost that it's a lot of kind of repurposing, similar to kind of how Fallout, the Fallout games deal with technology, where it's like there's just a lot of stuff and people don't necessarily know what it was for, but it could be for this. And the interesting thing about Galen's Glory is there was a lot of incredibly kind of avant-garde and edgy tech here back when it started, and there still is in the upper levels. But it also means that you occasionally find gearheads who are good at this sort of stuff. So you find your old friend Taz, who is just a proper meat slab of a human, but has incredibly delicate hands. So think like he is... Fuck, I'm trying to think what else this guy's been in. He was like he was one of the lieutenants on Sons of Anarchy, just like a big bear of a guy, big fuzzy beard, just like a barrel of a man, but incredibly almost like model level hands. Just these incredibly like soft and delicate hands. And you see him hunched as he always is over a circuit board, and he's using those hands in a way that you've always kind of envied, because you've always been a bit more brute forcey, and the precision with which he tries to rework technology has always been kind of fascinating to you. And he was expecting you, because I think you put this order in a while ago, and he's been building a rudimentary flight simulator, because you know that your brother has always dreamt of like, he loves going fast. So if he could go fast and up, like that's the fucking dream. And both of you in your, I think probably him out loud and more you internally, the idea of getting off this fucking planet, the planet of Vermeer, has always been very, very high on your list.
Yeah. But
it's like wishing to win the lottery. It's of no value to you because you can't affect it. So when I say a rudimentary flight simulator, I'm talking like some Pong ass shit. Like it is full on like black and green screen.
I imagine it like Blockout.
Yeah.
Like kind of like super like wires.
Oh,
kind of wire
it's basically
and
it's like bare. It's not really 3D. It's kind of 2D, but with that like way that people, admittedly, very brilliantly found to break old tech to make
Fox on Super Nintendo, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Just like interesting ways, or even earlier, like on Atari and stuff. Just an interesting way to kind of break it.
Yeah.
So pretty rudimentary, but you know it'll probably blow his mind. Taz just looks up and says, "Oh, Lyric, well, you're back. They take any bites out of you, or they get their meal elsewhere today?"
Oh, because they're cannibals.
Yeah. That's that was the joke.
I have no idea.
Typical Lyric. All right, well, listen. Hope the kid likes this. It's a bit wonky. Sometimes you have to blow in it to make the game work. It's a reference for people who were born in the 80s. The
46,000.
Yes, in Galen years.
What year is this?
I think they've just redone the calendar, so I don't fucking know. But you're in the 41st millennium. It's grimdark. And I think there is a concept called the Galen calendar, which is just like people had this idea that maybe they could just start the calendar at 0 when they started. So you are in the you're in the Galen 90s. So it's or say it's 398.
Okay.
So the colony's been alive for about 300 years.
Say, Tom, nerd Ryan.
Yeah,
Question.
get in here, bud.
When it comes to timeline, are we pre the latest edition of 40k with the Indominus Crusade?
Right fucking now, baby. Indominus is in full.
Gilliman's alive.
Gilliman's alive. The fucking whatever the hell that tear is that's ripping up the
right
galaxy.
through the middle of the galaxy. It's a train wreck.
Grork's smile, I believe, is the only one I can remember offhand because blah. But yes, no, we're right up to date because I thought that would be the most interesting.
Great.
So I'm sorry, 390s is not nearly long enough for a hive city to exist. So we'll just say that you're calling it the 90s. There's a more complicated calendar system.
I was gonna say 390 just depends on how fast they go around the sun.
Oh, actually, yeah. No, that's a valid point. That's a very valid point, Ryan. Thank you. So yes, 390, 398, but it's been a while. As a general rule, almost everything in the Imperium is like super old, even the new stuff. So just add whatever I say, just add a bunch of fucking years onto it.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Here's my question to you, Laura.
Yeah.
You actually find yourself with a bit more cash in hand than you expected, possibly because they felt bad they couldn't share their meal and or tooth whitening with you. Do you pay Taz exactly how much you owe him? Do you pay him more, or do you try and talk him down?
I pay him exactly what I owe him because it's the price that we agreed upon when we last spoke.
Okay.
And he will get no more, no less.
Cool. He also doesn't know you got a tip, so he's just like, "This is acceptable. Yeah, great."
Yeah.
He says, one of these days, you got to figure out something for you, huh?
What do you mean?
Give it a think. Maybe one day I can just make something for you.
Okay,
Gotta be
like
something
what?
you want. I don't know. You tell me. Maybe I can, up the voltage on your electro whip. That seems to be a thing you like.
Holy shit. Fuck, can you do that now?
And he holds up the exact amount you just paid him. He's like, when you've got this much again, I sure as shit can.
And I literally pull out the exact same amount. Because I have it on me. Because I literally just came from those stupid cannibals.
I'm thinking you spent that amount to get this thing. Money is hard to come by in your world. You're not walking around with... anyone who walks around with money down here is basically just like, hi, I'm a side quest to help you get gold.
Okay. No, right. Yeah, fine. I'm going to go do another fucking job and I'll be back. So be ready.
And he just like wiggles his fingers and he's like, what the fuck else do you think I do?
I assumed you get ready.
That is exactly what I was alluding to. Yes.
Yeah, no, you're great. This is why I keep coming back to you.
Well, thanks, Lyric. That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me. And with that, you head out of Blanc's cabin and you start making your way home. Speaking of home, Tyler, you have had to amuse yourself or keep yourself busy for the past couple days, knowing that yet again, Lyric has cut you out of a plan. And while admittedly, you're not quite sure how you could have been useful, you're pretty sure you could have been useful.
Definitely.
Who are you and what do you look like? And more importantly, what are you doing as you're stuck home alone?
I'm Lyric's younger brother, Alto, and I have been keeping myself busy by. I'll describe what I look like first. Alto's a young guy. He's like early 20s, and he has the same kind of physique as like Tom Holland when he's in like his like Spider-Man kind of mode. So he's like got a compact, like not bulky at all, short guy kind of body. He has a metal plate like shaped to the back of his head, and while he does look quite slim and small. He wears a night cloak, which is clearly too big for him. It's definitely made for like an adult person, but he wears it. And he has I want to get the pronunciation right here. He has a utility mechadendrite that he wears as like a backpack underneath this cloak. So when he's wearing it all, he looks a little bit bigger. He looks like a hunchback, basically. It's basically, and so what he's actually doing is without the cloak, he's got the manipulator arm on his back, and he's basically bouncing a ball against the wall and trying to catch it with this utility mechadendrite, just to make sure that he's got good reflexes within that, like the actuators are responding and stuff like that. And if he's like not able to catch it, he'll like take it off and tinker with it some more.
Cool. What do you think the kind of like homestead that you and Lyric share? Homestead's the wrong term, but what's the like? You have a farm in this weird tower of urban sprawl. What's your kind of like apartment situation?
It is basically a hole in the wall with some emergency exits kind of already taken care of in case we need to bolt at any given time. There's very little in the way of personal effects here. Basically nothing that can't just be thrown into a bag and carried out immediately. So it's basically, so it's like a small, excuse me, it's an extremely small unit. And I think the back wall has been blasted out and then covered with like, excuse me, with maybe, I think just like a big, like blanket just like draped over the wall with like a design on it. So it kind of looks like a really shitty tapestry, but it's just covering like an opening that we can run out when we need to. It's got like two, they're basically cots for us to sleep on, and not much else. There's a table with a lamp, and there's clearly like some equipment on there, like ammunition and things like that. But I'm basically just like leaned up against like tilting the chair back, bouncing this ball across the room because it's so narrow and small, and trying to catch it with my mechadendrite arm.
Cool. So as you toss the ball for the umpteenth time, because you stopped counting. Also, it's hard to count when you're mostly worried about calibration on like a piece of tech you've kind of had to build yourself. You go to catch it and you miss, but it's the damnedest thing because like the arm, like this a bunch of these times it's been because your calibration's been off. This time your calibration was definitely on, and it takes you sort of a moment to realize why. And when the realization hits you, you kind of feel your stomach drop because you realize the wall is shaking. And so violently that the ball kind of bounced off it at a different trajectory. And then the floor begins to rumble. And that's when you hear the first explosion. So as you kind of rush to the sort of entranceway and kind of like, I don't imagine it's a proper door. It's probably like something you've wedged in there. You pull it aside. And you see a cathedral falling from the sky. You see massive chunks of Gothic architecture and metal, and it takes your mind a moment to realize that this is in fact a ship and not architecture. And the shaking is from the first impact against the dome. The dome has been a constant in your existence since you were born. You've certainly dreamt of flight and of space, but the dome is the only sky you've ever really known. It was never anything but a given, and that's why when the next piece of debris that hits it shatters a chunk of it, you realize that your whole world is quite literally about to fall apart. And as the first kind of blast of fresh air that you've ever smelt reaches your nose, you think you can hear roars in the distance as all the things that the dome has kept away begin to close in around it. As the chunks of this ship continue to plummet, you see more and more cracks, but above it there's something dark. And as your eyes kind of adjust, you realize that it's the sort of the main body of the ship, and it is so large that it blots out most of the sky, and it is plummeting directly for the dome. Your first thought is to Lyric, who is currently on her way back. What do you do?
I think about Lyric, and then the training that she and Cal have both like hammered into me of, okay, this place is compromised. We have to go to our secondary location. Grab your go bag and go. So I throw on my night cloak, I grab my go bag, and I'm out through the hole in the wall behind our fucking rinky-dink little apartment that we've got here, and I'm on my way to a we'll say like a hovel. Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say like a hovel under like a bridge network.
Sure. So I'm going to
underpass.
say this is Kel's bolt hole. Kel, of course, being the woman who essentially raised you, a sort of a hardened bounty hunter, who had a number of kind of these bolt holes throughout the city. And basically the idea was if anything goes wrong, you go to the first one. If things are really bad, you go to the second one. And if things go completely pear-shaped, there's like a third one you don't talk about. But she was so paranoid that she, even though she loved and cared for both of you very much, she still never gave you the location of that third hole. But she did tell you basically that if things went really, really hairy, get to this hovel in the underpass, and that there'd be more instructions there. The sense you always got from her was that as a woman who very rarely took risks, well, took a lot of professional risks, but did everything she could to mitigate them, she always seemed to hint that she had a way out of the city, which seems insane because no one leaves the city. But you do remember her showing Lyric a sort of long, pale, pinkish, three-jointed finger once that she claimed to have gotten from a hunt outside the dome. So you kind of feel like, in addition to it being a regrouping point, your only way out of here might be that. Okay. So you begin to run there. Lyric, do you go back to the apartment or do you go to the bolt hole?
I have spent so much time training Alto to make sure that what he does in case of an emergency are just like complete second nature, that I have to trust that he's followed that. So I have to go to the bolt hole where I trust he'll be.
Okay. So you begin to rush your way there, and that's roughly when the screams begin. Meanwhile, Inquisitor Valentyne, you feel your bolt pistol click dry, having now dropped several of these former crewmen, and you realize as you kind of observe the corridors that they're spilling out of, that the very ship itself seems to be in some ways twisted and touched by chaos. For you, every time you close your eyes, you see these figures, these 10 figures around the Golden Throne. You hear the sickening squelch of the Emperor's body hitting the ground in front of you, which is truly the most outrageous, like almost comically blasphemous thing you can think of. Like, it's so far outside the realm of what even people try, like, you know, kids back when you were at the academy trying to outdo each other with, like, you know, the kinds of things bored children do. This is so far beyond the pale that having to see that every time you close your eyes is a true burden, and you can feel your very sanity kind of bouncing on the precipice. You can hear more shouts coming from kind of further down the corridor, but you have managed to clear your way to the escape pods. There's now kind of a, for lack of a better term, a trench of dead sort of mutants around you. The crew member you saved, she's badly injured, but is still conscious. Meanwhile, you can feel, again, the ship is screaming at this point. The metal is doing that horrible sound that heavy metal tearing does. That is, again, just a highly unnatural sound. And whenever you've looked down, you've seen what almost looks like a mirage, sort of a glimmering surface beneath you. But whatever it is, it's coming up damn fast. So my question to you is, do you go and attempt to save the rest of the crew? Do you grab this crew member and hop in, or do you just hop in the pod?
I'll grab this crew member and hop in. He'd look after himself and he'd do what he's supposed to, but he'd like grit his teeth, kind of grab her by the collar if she's down and drag her into the pod. Just along the way, trying to hang on to his sanity, kind of starting to be like, it's a great day for the Emperor, great day. And then he'd just turn around and whistle. And that skull that was on the floor that we heard hit earlier just zips around the corner flying. And he's like, oh, good, Eugene, inside. And Eugene, the loudhailer skull, will also fly into the pod. And then the moment everybody's in, he'll figure out however these eject. And
sure. So the Navy officer just like puts her hand up. She's like, "Wait!" And this is what? And you see her look back, and then she just pulls out her dagger and jams it into a tentacle that was starting to kind of like slink around the edge of the door. And it kind of like does that weird like. I don't know why tentacles always scream in movies, but it's like, and it gets like pulled out with her dagger, and she's like, didn't have a ticket, and she slams the door, and then she just points at a button, and passes out.
Great. I'm gonna hit the button first, and then how long do I think I have till impact? Basically, if he thinks he could strap both of them in, he'd do it. But if he can only strap one person in, he'd strap himself in.
Realistically, like, you're falling pretty fast. Also, you're in an escape pod meant for space.
Strapping himself in.
Yes, yeah. Great. So you strap yourself in. Do you grab Eugene, or is you just trust that he'll kind of bumble around in the cabin?
I think I'd probably grab him. Like, he'd fly around, but it's going to be a collision. So if I could, like, pin him in webbing, there's probably webbing for, loose stuff where I jam him in. And then I'd probably just do gritted teeth, be, like, praying on the way down. It's like, dear God, Emperor. So it's Lucius. This is obviously not the best day, but it's a good day. It's a good day. Don't worry, it's a good day. If you could spare your servant on the other side of this, that would be super. Because, or not, also super. Everything is good. And then he's just hurtling through space.
Yeah. So the pod, as soon as you press the button, launches. So it's the classic, like, oh shit, like you're webbing yourself in as it's jettisoning. Immediately, it's just spinning. Like, it's just fucking cartwheeling down through space. You can feel the thrusters firing in every direction as this thing tries to right itself. But if you think about it, for something that's supposed to fire in a vacuum, it's literally just like launching a weird cannonball. And you can see other pods kind of launching, but as the view screen, like the sort of viewport, flashes past you a couple of times, you see the Gilead's fist just pummel into this dome and completely shatter it. And then as the pod begins to right itself, you see a sight that you've always considered, hypothetically, because it's the kind of thing that you've always been curious about. But the question was always, in a siege, how would one breach a hive city? And the answer is, you drive an entire ship into it. And you see a sight that very few in the Imperium of Man have ever seen. You see a hive city collapse. And that's when your pod crashes through a bridge and into the ground. A few moments later, Lyric, you rush up to the hovel to see Alto looking at the smoking wreckage of what looks like an escape pod. The bridge that the hovel was hidden under is now a pile of rubble, kind of cushioning this escape pod. And you see other pods beginning to kind of like hit the ground around you. Meanwhile, behind you, there is a massive kind of blast of dust and dirt as the Hive City begins to implode. You can hear screams, you can hear shooting, and in the distance, you think you can see small kind of pale white things begin to spill up and over the cracks in the dome. But none of that matters for the moment because Alto is okay.
Yeah. Also, you're intact.
Oh, hi, Lyric. Yeah. I like pat down my chest and like, yeah.
The
I think
robot
so.
arm is just like also patting you down.
Yeah. All my bits and pieces are still with me. Yeah.
Okay, good. And you got all the essentials, right?
I just grabbed my go bag. Yeah.
Okay, good. That's good. You did what you had to do. All right, we got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. That's makes sense. Are you okay?
Yeah. I'm fine. Let's move.
Okay.
So, Alto, you produce the map that had been stowed away by Kel for the two of you. And unfortunately, it was pretty much all you were able to grab before the hovel was decimated by the sort of collapsing bridge. There was more to the package, but you managed to get a letter and the map. But there was something on a chain that you weren't quite able to get that is now well gone. And the map points to something called the astral line. And Alto, this is something that you have hoped was real pretty much your whole life. There was always talk that the great architect Galen was planning a series of interconnected colonies that would be connected by something called the astral line. It was a way for colonists to travel between the planets without having to brave the perils of the warp through a series of essentially rail-launched ships. So think like a rail cannon with a ship attached to it. So less need for fuel. It was an easier way to get off planet. And if true, this could be a way for you and Lyric to get off world. Do you think? I don't know how sentimental Alto is. Would you read this letter, or would you read it for information, or would you read it as?
Yeah, he would read it. Yeah,
Cool.
Definitely. If it's something that Kel left, that's and it's like new. Like it's like Kel's been gone so long, and here's this letter from her. Like that's amazing.
So it just says, well, hey, kids, if you're reading this, I'm probably pretty fucking dead. And I gotta tell you, I'm not mad when I'm writing this, but I'm probably mad now. Because being dead is for fucking losers. And
I'm just I'm over his shoulder. I'm over his shoulder being like, God, she was so long-winded.
She's like, if I know Lyric, she's bitching about how long this letter is. Alto, you be a good boy and tell her to shut the fuck up, because I'm dead and she's got to listen to me. I'll wait.
Lyric, Kel says I have to tell you to shut the fuck up.
Yeah,
so
no,
shut the fuck up. Kel told me that I'm allowed to say it. So
yeah, thanks, kiddo. Keep reading.
Shut up, Lyric.
Sure that went over real good. So, listen, if you're at the second location, that means things went real tits up, and I'm sorry I'm not there to help you, but I did leave something for you just in case. As you probably determined from looking at this here map that I painstakingly hand drew, Lyric, I love you. There is a way off this hellhole, but I gotta tell you, I've been from one side of this galaxy to the other, and there's not much better out there. So only go if you really gotta. I told your sister this, but I didn't tell either of you. I came by my skills not growing up as hive rats like you two clowns, but I served under an Inquisitor back in the day, and we traveled around a bit, and we saw some things, and I gotta tell you, it's a big fucking scary galaxy out there, and it is worse than you can possibly imagine. But if things have gotten bad here, then you gotta go. The astral line was meant to be a way for agents of the Inquisition to get planet to planet without anyone paying too much notice. Old Galen was quite nice to us Inquisitory folk, and luckily I still got my credentials. So if you use the icon I left you there on my precious icon chain, it's also got a Hello Kitty on it, which is something I found throughout the galaxy. It's a little cat who likes to say hello. It's very adorable. In any case, this will get you in there, and after that, it's up to you. Galaxy's yours, kids. Go fuck them up.
And Alto's like turning over the envelope and like checking the back of the paper, being like, we didn't get her Inquisitor symbol. We didn't get the Hello Kitty thing.
Was it
just points to the rubble. Like,
in classic comedic fashion, like a metal pipe just embarrassingly falls off and bounces off the rubble and rolls down, further implying how broken it is.
I just put like my hands to my head. I'm like, well, then what the fuck use is this to us?
We can probably still get there and maybe get on board. I could probably get us on.
Can you? Well, then let's go.
Okay.
Lyric, you hear a sound that Kel had described to you a number of times. And looking over your shoulder, I don't know if you watched the X-Files, but if you saw the infamous Fluke Man episode, it's that kind of thing. It's like a cross between a leech and a human.
Okay.
The face is mostly teeth. The legs seem to have kind of withered to a point that they're no longer usable, but the arms are long with multi-articulated fingers. And you hear one of these things hissing behind you, and behind it you see more. And as, again, the wind blows across your face, you realize that what everyone spent so long trying to keep outside is now inside. And as you sort of fall into a combat stance, you see these things kind of coming up over the wreckage around you in all directions. And that's when you hear the roar of a chainsword. And dragging himself out of the escape pod with Eugene under his arm is Inquisitor Valentyne. Valentyne, you see a couple of weird hive dwellers and what seem to be a bunch of kind of mutant monstrosities. They don't look chaos necessarily. They look more radiation-y to your eye, but still a threat and still very present. Good news is you just heard them bicker pretty hard about a way off this planet. And as you, in the brief moments you were blacked out, standing back in the throne room, you manage to see something, and you get the sense that now, whenever you dream, more of this dark vision will be revealed. But on the woman dressed in robes, you're able to catch just the corner of a tablet as the servitor skull scanned it with light. The date is exactly 1 year from today, which means you have exactly 1 year to find these 10 conspirators and put an end to the blasphemy that will destroy the Imperium. Unfortunately, your crew is dead. You haven't been an Inquisitor for very long, pretty much since right before you got on this ship. And the second thing you saw in the darkness was a very distinctive inquisitorial badge hanging around this woman's neck. So you're kind of in need of allies. And, as luck would have it, it seems your prayers are answered. Because here are two, and they need your help. Turns out, Inquisitor Valentyne, you were right. It is a good day. What do you say to them?
Congratulations, you're both under the employ of the Inquisition. Let's kill these mutants.
And though they didn't know it at the time, Imperial records would later show that this moment, this specific moment, this meeting of these three people, was the beginning of the infamous Valentyne Heresy.
This episode of the Valentyne Heresy features Ryan LaPlante at the Ryan LaPlante on Twitter as Inquisitor Lucius Valentyne, Tyler Hewitt at Tyler_Hewitt on Twitter as Alto, Laura Elizabeth at EL Hamstring on Twitter as Lyric, and our Game Master Tom McGee at McGeeTD on Twitter. This episode was edited by Ryan LaPlante, and the Valentyne Heresy's show logo was created by Decapitated Markers at Decapitated Marker on Twitter. That's MRKR. Our theme song is The Hordes by Megan McDuffie, and our ads use the tracks No Control and Chiefs by Jazzar, JAHZZAR, provided by freemusicarchive.org. When it comes to Dum-Dums and Dice, you can visit our website at dumdumdice.com. Our Twitter and Instagram are at dumdumdice, and on Facebook at facebook.com/dumdumdice. We have merchandise available at redbubble.com/people/dumdumdice, and most importantly, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/dumdumdice. That's DUMBDICE. Ave Imperator, and death to all the heretics.
Dum-Dums and Dice has to give a special thank you to the supreme beings of our Patreon at this time: Christian Menicola, Long, the Half-Blind Prophet, James Cuellar, DM Rob, Christopher Little, Olin Anderson, Sue One, Devin Boyce, George Dolby, One True Artistry, Orion Birchfield, Anthony Griffin, and Jill and Noel LaPlante. If you want your name to be added to this list, you can join our Patreon too at patreon.com/dumdumdice. Thanks to them, and a little bit of thanks to you.